And it was one of those things that just kind of rung a bell and struck a note with me that I was absolutely not prepared for. And something called on me and said, you need to pursue this. And you've had those moments, whatever higher power or force you believe, you sometimes get those messages where you just realize I need to listen to this and pursue it. And I did. And it was funny because something just said, I'm going to get this if I just take the steps necessary.
Hi, friend. Welcome to the Scaling Therapy Practice. I'm James Marland, your course creation coach. I'm here to help therapists who want to scale their reach with effective online courses. I'll share with you all the tools, tips, and technology I've learned along the way that will help you put your mission in motion. The world is waiting for someone like you to take action. Hi, friend. Very excited to let you know that we're going to do another webinar with an expert this Friday, February 28th at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be a transformational webinar on leveraging AI in course creation. It will be with me, James Marland, and author and digital strategist, Allison. Now, this is just as in a webinar on prompts and how to use ChatGPT. It's actually a webinar on how to use AI in the different areas of your business. So we'll dive into topics like how AI can help you streamline your practices, improve your customer support, and even develop new revenue streams like online courses or marketing like podcasting. So secure your spot today. Go to www.coursecreationstudio.com/AI with J. Now for today's show, we're going to be exploring podcasting. Podcasting, as you know, is a dynamic tool that can help you do many wonderful things. Build an audience, showcase your expertise, network with other thought leaders, and even build a community of listeners. Joining us today is going to be Andrew Chapman. He's a podcasting marketing guru from Maricy FM. He actually produces and manages several podcasts on Maricy FM, and you actually should go check out the Maricy FM page. There'll be a link in the show notes, and also their YouTube channel. If you're into course creation, if you're into coaching, they have a whole station of wonderful shows. So I'm really happy and fortunate that I met Andrew in person and we hit it off and we started a conversation. So join us today where he goes through some tips and tricks on how to leverage podcasting to help you reach your audience and grow your business. So hello and welcome to the Scaling Therapy Practice. This is James Marland, your host. This is the show where we empower mission-driven leaders to launch life-changing online courses. I'm really happy that you're here today because we have a special guest, Andrew Chapman. He's the director of podcast marketing, podcasting at Maricy FM. And man, I met him at a mastermind, an in-person, really a real live in-person mastermind where we went to an actual place and talked to each other. And we had a really great conversation about podcasting and marketing and courses. And he just has a wealth of information to share with the audience about podcasting and marketing and things to do that are able to help you promote your show or promote your course. So Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hello there. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, James.
Yeah. You come from a wealth of information. You also work for Maricy, which is a business accelerator course creation company. They also do podcasts. They have several awesome podcasts on their station. So, but Andrew, tell me your journey of how you came to work there. You have a lot of history there. What's your story?
Yeah, it was a bit of an accidental thing. It was something funny happened on the way, kind of a story. But my background was actually in book publishing, where I had worked for just above 35 years in just about every capacity. I was an author, a publisher, consultant. I led an association for book publishing related professionals, on and on and on, speaker and so forth. Did that for a long time. And then several years ago, I was, kind of in the roughly pandemic era of things where everybody's trying to figure out what they want to do in life. But really prior to that, I was also kind of coming to a sense of stagnation in my work. And it was kind of like I'd done most everything I wanted to do, but what do I want to do next? Getting older, trying to figure, well, what's my legacy? What do I want to do that it leaves a bigger mark and a better mark? And I ended up discovering Maricy, as you had alluded to, which is an online education company, really. And I learned about the concept of course creation. And I kind of knew about online courses, and I'd done a lot of teaching in the publishing realm of things, working in various capacities, teaching in person. But the idea of doing online courses was pretty much new to me. And then with the pandemic, of course, that all exploded. And I thought, wow, this could really be the next turn for me. I jumped into the Maricy universe, what we call the Miraverse, and started taking courses, and I joined their Teach Your Gift membership program, attended live events, on and on and on. And I was kind of getting my hands around what I want to do in course creation, because as you know, and as your listeners know, there's a lot that you can choose from. I mean, if you say, oh, I want to be a course creator, that's just the beginning. What are you going to teach on? How are you going to teach? What's the format going to be? Who's your audience going to be? I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And that can lead to analysis paralysis. So I admit to a bit of that in my process, but I also did want to get it right. One of the things as you get older, you realize, well, I don't have as much time. So you try to be a bit more efficient about what you choose to do, and you don't want to spread yourself too far. Well, as I said, funny thing happened on the way. And in the midst of being a student at Maricy, I got notification that they were looking for somebody to join the podcast team. And I thought, wow, that is interesting. And it was one of those things that just kind of rung a bell and struck a note with me that I was absolutely not prepared for. And something called on me and said, you need to pursue this. And you've had those moments, whatever higher power or force you believe, you sometimes get those messages where you just realize I need to listen to this and pursue it. And I did. And it was funny because something just said, I'm going to get this if I just take the steps necessary. And I did. And in January of 2023, I was asked to join the team. And I was a podcast writer, which is a little bit of an awkward term because we don't script our shows quite to the degree that you would think a podcast writer would script them. It's not like an NPR or some of these other shows that are heavily scripted. We do a bit of that. We do some scripting. So it's a lot of ancillary writing, as you know, show notes and all the stuff that goes around the actual podcast itself. Did that and got better and better. And I was under the leadership of our director at the time, and she trained me very well and got me up to speed. And then this past summer in June, the director who really created the podcast network for the most part, almost single-handedly herself, her name's Cynthia Lamb. She decided to move on. She's got some other things she wants to pursue, and that left an opening. And they said, do you want to jump in? And it was right a day before my birthday. And it was just such a strange turn of events to have that occur in the midst of some other things happening. But again, I was called on and said, I think I need to take up on this. And since June of this past year, I've been the director of podcasting at Maricy FM.
You're talking about an opportunity opened up and you had the chance to walk through the door. Talk about that, sort of like that moment there.
It was unnerving. And I felt like I wasn't ready. I felt like I'd only been there for just over, at that point, almost a year and a half. Did I know enough? I had not been exposed to everything there was to know. It was all of that insecurity that you get. And thankfully, having been a student in Maricy, both as an actual student and also as an employee student, so to speak, I realized you're never ready.
Yeah.
There's always more you need to know. There's always more you could learn. There's always, you're just never always fully ready. You have to feel the fear and step into it regardless. And that's what I did. I just said, okay, I'm going to make this work. They trust in me, so I will trust in myself, and I can figure things out. And one of the great things about the company is they're firm believers in figuring things out. They don't espouse the idea of having to know everything up front and In fact, going through their application process, they don't even have you turn in a resume or anything. They just basically are assessing you as a learner, because they believe if you're a learner and someone who can continually improve, you're going to be an ideal person to work with them. And so that kind of company ethos was very much in my mind. And I said, no, I need to really jump on this. It was exciting. Don't get me wrong. It was just at the same time a bit unnerving.
Yeah. Yeah, they do have a really good company culture where, you gotta take action. Like, you can't just sit on the sidelines. You got to take action and do things. So now you're describe briefly, before we get into like talking about some lessons, what is Maricy FM, and what is your day-to-day job now?
Maricy FM comprises 13 shows that are either legacy shows or currently active shows. So we have 2 shows that ran as limited series. They were 8 episodes apiece. And then every other show is effectively an ongoing show as long as the host is interested. Mm-hmm. And we have a combination of in-house shows and we have client shows. And so the in-house shows, as you would imagine, are very much built around trying to raise awareness about Maricy, trying to use as an extension of what we teach as a company. And then the client shows are exactly what you would imagine. Those are shows where we do the production and all the work for the clients that are interested in having their own show, but they don't want to do all the production. They're, these are busy entrepreneurs who've got enough on their plate without having to go through all the rigmarole of creating a podcast. As you full well know, it can be difficult, and they make a strategic decision to just go ahead and offload that to us while they pursue their core competency in entrepreneurship. And then that basically is what we're doing. We're looking to expand. We have 2 new shows that are in the pre-production at this point to launch this year. We've got some other ones that we're looking at starting as well. And the day-to-day activity, gosh, you know the answer to that is a little bit amorphous. It's it's everything and everything that comes up at the moment. It's keeping on top of the productions of all of the different shows and where we're at, looking at the marketing and looking at the vision and the forward focus of what we're going to be doing in the upcoming months to a year. I have a wonderful team that's with me, so I'm certainly not doing it by myself. And so part of my work is to more or less keep on top of what they're all doing. And then I also have a couple of shows that I produce myself personally. So I'm responsible for keeping those shows going and making sure that the production and the edits and those shows stay on track. And we continue to get guests, which is, of course, always an ever stretching task, as you know.
Okay, so you mentioned a couple things that we're going to focus in on as we were doing a little pre-production. We're talking about what if you're going to use a podcast, how do you market it, or lessons learned in marketing. Some of them were probably coming from your book publishing and all that, and some of them are probably going to come from experience and some painful things. And then you also talked about vision and strategy for podcasting. So we're going to hit those topics today and try to glean some information for people who are thinking about podcasting, using podcasting as a tool for marketing. So, Andrew, what are some of the lessons you've learned in your experience that from your book publishing days, but also as you're doing the podcasting? What are some of those lessons that we can use for our own podcasts or our marketing strategy?
Yeah, I would say the main lesson, and it's interesting that you tied those two together, because as much as I felt like going into podcasting was something very left turn and not what I expected, it actually has drawn very much from what I had learned through my career in book publishing. Effectively, in both cases, we're talking about communication. We're talking about reaching out to people, selling a product that people enjoy in some media capacity, building an audience, and trying to capitalize on that success in whatever way is necessary. And luckily, I primarily worked with entrepreneur authors and self-publishers who are looking to use their book to build their business, or looking to use their book as a calling card. And in some ways, a podcast serves the same purpose. So it's just a different medium for effectively very much the same goal. And in drawing from that, the first thing that comes to mind is the world is enormous. There are lots and lots of people out there, and that is both good and bad. It's intimidating because you feel like I have to reach so many people, and there's just such a huge world out there. How can I reach everybody? But at the same time, it's comforting because you come to realize that it is a huge world and there's room for all of us. And your success isn't predicated on being the biggest and best and most widely known podcast or course creator. It's just simply for you to be, as Seth Godin says, famous to the family. You just need to have your own selection of whatever you find to be the most important people that follow what you're doing and be famous to them. And you probably know about Kevin Kelly's 1,000 True Fans. And that's another way of kind of putting it, is that you can build a very successful business, practice following cause, whatever you're trying to achieve, really by having a more selective and not as big as you think group of people who are interested in what you're trying to pursue, and gaining their attention through trust, gaining their attention through what you have to share, and doing it whether it's a podcast or a book. And so the biggest lesson as I tie to that is just simply reminding yourself that the world is a big place. You don't have to conquer it all. You just need to conquer the one little part that matters to you the most.
So you mentioned a couple things that I'm going to pick up a little bit. One is the podcast is a calling card for a greater offer. You mean I can't make thousands of dollars every episode when I just publish it?
Are you? We're certainly not.
I know, like, I'll publish it and I'll get these sponsors, and my pipeline will fill up.
Oh yeah,
instantly. Like, those are the dreams. Like, but you called it something that I think is better, a better illustration. It's a calling card. Like, it's a piece of information that lets people know a core thing about you and how to connect with you in a deeper way. Like, and I think podcasts are great. They're not very difficult to start. The tools are like the tools we have now.
Yeah.
Are just amazing. For $20, I have a recording studio. Like,
it's astonishing. It absolutely is.
So it's easy to do, but the doing it initially anyways, because, I'm going to make money, and, all I have to do is produce this show, and everybody will come to my webpage because it's on the internet now and I have a podcast. It's not, that hasn't been my experience. And I belong to a podcast network, and that it helps them, but it's not their experience either. Because what do we talk about almost every month? We talk about, advertisers, and how do we get sponsors, and how do we grow our audience? And that's like, every month we're talking about that and growing. So, when people come to you to pitch a show, do they have that fallacy of thinking, this is going to solve all my problems?
Yes, I think that is a very, very common thing, because it's exactly what you said at the start, in the sense that people feel like the purpose of the podcast is to build an audience, and then you will have enough followers, you have listeners, or if you're on YouTube, you'll have viewers, and that will translate to ad revenue or sponsorship revenue. And you can choose that path if you want. And again, going back to the analogy of book publishing, you can choose that as well, in terms of, I want to sell 1 million copies or 100,000 copies or whatever. Understand, however, that if you choose to go that path, it's really rarefied air that you're going to be in if you accomplish those things. And that's okay. It's just a choice. And if that's what you want to do, go, 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 go. However, it is quite the climb. And now, of course, the competition is much greater than it was 15 years ago. Even as open as the podcast market is, like, we still haven't even reached anything close to a saturation point, which is hard to believe. But that's because largely, as you know, I mean, most podcasts last 2, 3, 4 episodes and then the person's done. So, it's a long tail situation where the vast majority are really not even amounting to much, but sort of take up room, so to speak. But the idea is, what do you want to accomplish with the podcast and how can it serve you? And if you choose to put aside listenership and being famous and all the things that we tend to get most attracted to because we think that's the solution, how can you monetize? We'll just talk about it from a financial perspective. How can you monetize the back end of the podcast? So instead of trying to rely on making money through ad revenue, which as it's paltry. I mean, you have to have many, many tens of thousands of consistent downloads before you're going to be even earning a relatively small amount of money. You're not going to be paying the rent. You're not going to be paying your car insurance or whatever until you've got lots and lots of people that are consistently downloading and listening or watching on YouTube. And then sponsorship is even more tricky. I mean, you can get a lot of low-level sponsors that maybe don't mean anything to you, but that's not going to build you a good listenership. The listenership wants to have sponsors that are meaningful to them, that are authentic to you. And so that's a difficult lift there as well. And again, you're not going to get much out of it. So the way we've followed things at Maricy FM, and what I think tends to be best, especially for your listenership, is the podcast in support of a back-end situation. And that might be a coaching practice, obvious example, therapy practice. It could be a course creator. Basically, whatever your business happens to be, what can you offer that is singular and very obvious in the way that you convey your information as a thought leader through your podcast? So as you're communicating in your podcast, there is something that's going to resonate with people about you. They're going to come to realize that this is what is your sort of special sauce. Mm-hmm. And ideally, that's what will connect to whatever your offer might happen to be. And of course, that can vary from just about every listener that you have here today, listening to the show as to what that might be for them in particular.
So we're talking about strategy, I guess, or like why are you doing it? Because, if you're doing your podcast, I guess there's different ways to do the podcast, right? Like models for strategy and models to accomplish your goals. You started talking about that with the having guests on that support your mission or that support what's going on. What are some other models for podcasting?
Well, you obviously have the direct to listener type, which is very difficult. So that's where you have the podcast host speaking directly to the listener. There isn't an interview happening. Mm-hmm. And there are many examples of those that are out there. That require I think that's one of the most difficult, because you have to have a lot of good material. You have to be able to say things that people are very interested in, and you have to be very engaging in it. I used Seth Godin. I mentioned Seth Godin earlier. He's a great example. His podcast rarely ever has guests. It's him talking. He has the ability to do that, and very few people do. Excuse me, burping. So we'll say that again.
I was thinking about back in the day, not quite as much anymore, but I used to listen to a lot of sportscasters, and there were some shows that had guests on all the time, and then there were others like Colin Cowherd. He just talks. He just talks and talks and talks. Stream of ideas, stream of opinions. Hardly any guests when I was listening to the show, and I was just amazed at that type of ability to think off the top of the head, to have so much content. It was to me that's scary, a little scary, a little frightening, to be able to talk for, he would talk for 4 hours. I think it was like a 4-hour show, just talk all about the content of now sports generally has a lot of going on, and a lot of news, and a lot of opinions. There's a lot of opinions in sports. So talking directly to the audience, one-on-one. What are some other models?
Well, you also have the, of course, interview like we have here today. And that is generally the best in the sense that it can create a lot of what you need, because it takes a lot to be a good host, but the weight of the show is largely on the guest. And so if you can pick good guests, you will theoretically have a good show. Now, you do have to ask good questions and you have to edit it well, and there's other things that go into that. But it's nice because it does take a lot of the weight off of you versus, as you were talking about previously. The next type of show would be, again, more of a scripted. So I talked about how we don't really do very scripted shows at Maricy, and these are the higher level production quality and effort that goes into it. So an example might be going out into the world and doing a show. And this one, I'm trying to think of an example that would tie into your audience as course creators, but that's a little bit difficult. But an example of where you were to go, like go back to my book publishing days. If I were to do a podcast related to that, I might go to printers, I might go to distributors, I might go out there into the world to the various service providers that you have and go onto their site, location, in person, talk about how the printing press works, talk about do that type of a thing where you're out in the real world talking with people. The other way you can set up a podcast format that's challenging for a different reason I'll get to in a second, which is kind of the roundtable discussion forum. And that's a really, really good one, because if you can just simply moderate, meaning kind of keep everything on track and herd the cats, that can be very successful. However, it's difficult because you've got to get anywhere from 2, 3, 4, 5 people scheduled.
Yeah.
And that can be difficult in itself because you want good guests, and the good guests are going to be busy, and how do you get them all at the same time? And
I did that about a year ago, and it was great. It was a good roundtable, but just what you were saying, getting everybody together and schedules and conflicts. And, if you have 4 people signed up for a roundtable, but only one person shows up, well, now it's just an interview. Yeah. So it's sort of like, do you keep going with that, even though you promised a roundtable? Like it was a great experience. I would do it again, but it was logistically a little more difficult than, hey, everybody, let's show up and talk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the table's not very round when there's only one person on the other side.
Yeah.
And then the last thing related to formatting, I guess, would be sort of the structure of the show in terms of, so you can have an interview show, but then how is the interview show structured? So you could have a show that starts with you perhaps presenting for 5 minutes by yourself as the host, talking about the topic of the day, setting the stage for the interview, and then have the interview go for, say, 15 or 20 minutes, and then maybe have some takeaway points. And you could also have a show where you do a combination of things. You might have a talk about the topic of the day, or a topic that you've got going on in the news, which ties back to what you were saying about sports. This is a really common sports format. Let's talk about the topic of the day. Then we might have a guest on, or we might have 2 guests on. And then we go into that sort of interview format there. So it's kind of a mix. And then the last thing would be, of course, a show where you have 2 hosts. And those can work very, very well. I've got a friend who does a podcast. They've passed their 400th episode, in fact, and done very, very well because the 2 of them play off of each other perfectly. And anybody who's had a lot of people have best friend are like, oh, we should do a podcast. And it's a very natural thing if the 2 of you have that kind of chemistry. So I would say off the top of my head, that's probably the last format that comes to mind in terms of what someone might do. Well,
neat. That was interesting about talking about the different ways or strategies to do a podcast. I'm wondering, as we're thinking about wrapping up here, if somebody wants to create a podcast for promoting their show, promoting their course, like the show is the calling card, do you have any tips, or like what is working for Maricy, or what have you seen working in the past that you're trying to emulate in your practice? Like if somebody wanted to get started with a podcast for their course, what would they do?
Yeah, I think here's what I would suggest off the top of my head. If someone was in a course creator mode, I would think at first about doing a limited series, perhaps 8 to 10 to 12 episodes. And there's 2 reasons for that. Number one, it gives you a chance to try it out without the feeling of failure if you decide to stop after several episodes, because you've already put an endpoint on it. Secondly, it's a great way to break down material. So if you have a course creator who's got, say, 8 modules in their course, well, guess what? You've got 1 module per episode. that you could talk on. And it creates a very natural structure that you've already created with your course that you can then parlay into the podcast. Now, if you want to add on an interview, it really depends on, again, going back to what we said before about personality and your own particular skill. If you feel like you can carry it very well yourself, perhaps you're a public speaker or a professional speaker, you might be able to go ahead and do those 8 episodes or 10 episodes yourself, have no interviews or anything else. But if you feel like that's a bit of a weight to carry for your own situation, then go ahead and identify guests who could come in and that you can interview related to your individual episode topic. That again ties back to your course.
Yeah, that limited series idea is good. I've heard other people share about that as well, but it's evergreen. Like, it's out there. People Google your name or search for your name or put it in your iTunes or Spotify player. It's going to be there, like your topic, your name, and your expertise. And it's a great way to be discovered just by having it out there. And I also like the idea of, the end point. Oh my word. Like, I'm going to start a podcast and do it forever. And, it's a lot of work, but now, then you feel like a failure, and it's, but if you're passionate about your topic, you could probably talk about it for 8 episodes and make an outline. And that doesn't mean you have to talk for 30 minutes or an hour on it. You could have 8 15-minute episodes, 8-minute episodes,
yes.
Just talk about it, introduce the topic, say why it's important, tell people how they can find you, and thank them for listening. And there you go. Like, that's your show. Like, I really do like that limited series thing. And I know with Kajabi, podcasts built into the platform, so you could have it there as part of your product. And if you ever wanted to update more, or if you're relaunching an episode or whatever, you just do an update. And that could be a way to support your show or support your course with some evergreen content. And the other way that you could use it is if people email you about questions about the show, or you're in a chat group and people ask about something that you're like an expert in. You're like, oh, I've done a podcast on that. Here's the episode. Here's the link. I'd love, if you have any questions, let me know more. So that limited series can give you some testing grounds, because maybe you're not, maybe you're going to love it and you're like, oh man, I need to keep going. Or maybe you're going to be like, well, I need to hire somebody to do this. Like, it's so much work. And, I don't like talking. I need to change the format. It's a really good on and off point. I think that limited series, that's a great idea.
Yeah. I've found that's it, because when you think about, well, let's talk about therapy and how that relates to in this. When you think about whether it's coaching or therapy, different sort of ways of doing things, but both with the goals of obviously helping people get past their particular situation that they're addressing. Being able to bring things into a manageable state is what helps so much. How can we take this current situation, either chunk it down or in some capacity make it manageable for someone to get from point A to point B? And the more that you can do that for clients, whether it's clients in a therapeutic or coaching sense, or whether it's clients in a podcasting sense, it helps people to get where they want to go. And from Maricy that's also a big teaching point, because what it does is it helps you to create momentum. If you have very small wins on a consistent basis, that's how you get to success. And in a podcasting sense, doing it at a limited way creates that small chunking down. I now have 8 episodes or 10 or whatever. That's all I have to create. And then, as you said just a moment ago, if you love it and find that this is what you want to do, well, you could just shift. You can pivot and you can start a new podcast or just extend it. You could do whatever you want to do, but it gives everybody a much less intimidating way to go, which I think is often the biggest hurdle.
All right. Did you have any other points on that? I kind of went off on that limited series idea. I think that's really a good way to start, though. If you're looking to start, just do a limited series. Call it a limited series. Do one episode per lesson, and see what it happens. Like that, done is better than perfect, right? That's a mantra.
Exactly.
In Maricy, and also you're never going to know if you don't release it. So how are you going to get feedback if you don't try it? So
yeah, and one thing I will add real quickly to that is the other reason the limited series is ideal is because marketing is such a huge component of success. Getting the word out there about your podcast. People are not going to discover it on their own. It's very, very difficult. Same with a book. So instead of trying to manage an ongoing podcast week after week after week or bi-weekly after bi-weekly, and at the same time try to promote it, you create the singular limited series, and then you can go forward from there and work on the marketing of that so that the word can get out there and you're not being distracted and consumed by the ongoing production of your podcast at the same time. And then if you decide, as I said, boom, just keep going or start a new podcast if you love it that much.
Great. I feel like there's a lot more we could talk about, but we are at time, so we're going to wrap it up. Andrew, can you tell, do you want people to find you on the internet? Like normally at this part of the show, I'm like, hey, tell people about where people can find you and learn more about you. So what do you want to say about what you're doing and how people can find you?
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, people are like, do I want to be found? I don't know. Do I? No, I'm perfectly happy about that. I do want to definitely share what we're doing. And so I would say best thing to do is to go to maricyfm.com, or you can also go to maricy.fm. How convenient. But basically go there. You'll learn all about our shows. And if you're interested in pursuing getting a show going of your own, you want some ideas or advice or tips or anything like that, let me know. And just contact us through there, and we'll definitely be able to help you out if we can.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys put on some great shows. I was listening to one of the most recent ones. It was Making It, and you were talking about, it was Archangel. Was that the name of it?
Yeah.
Archangel. And oh man, the guy's name's escaping me. But I was like enthralled by that episode. Who was it?
Giovanni Marsico. Yeah. He's great story.
I was like, oh man, that's awesome. It was really good. I even looked him up and friended him. Like I was like, oh man, I got to follow this guy. So go to Maricy.fm, or it'll be in the show notes, and check out their shows and check out the resources that they have. It's a wonderful program. And if you're a course creator, a content creator, and your gifts are not producing podcasts, check out their services. All right. Andrew, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much, James. This was an honor to be here, and I'm glad we had the time today. Really cool.
And thanks, everybody, for listening. It's now time to put your mission in motion. Hi, friends. Welcome to the show. Today, hi, friend. Join us Friday, February 28th. Now, it sounds too much like an ad, but it is an ad. I guess I should just run with it. Hi, friend. Join us Friday, February 28th at 10:30 a.m. for a webinar, Leveraging AI for Course Creation. That's Leveraging AI for Course Creation. I'll be hosting this along the author and digital strategist, Allison. We will dive into how AI can revolutionize your practice, streamline client support, and create new revenue opportunities through online course. It's not just a webinar on how to use AI, but how you can leverage AI in different areas of your business to expand your impact. I'm going to move that sentence. All right, take two. Hi, friend. Very excited to let you know that we're going to do another webinar with an expert this Friday, February 28th at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be a transformational webinar on leveraging AI in course creation. It will be with me, James Marland, and author and digital strategist, Allison. Now, this just isn't a webinar on prompts and how to use ChatGPT. It's actually a webinar on how to use AI in the different areas of your business. It's actually a webinar on how to use AI in the different areas of your business. So actually we'll talk about topics like how AI can streamline client support and create new revenue opportunities and create online courses and help you create individualized treatment plans. I don't know if it'll. So we will be talking about topics like how AI can help you streamline your practice, improve your client support, and even help you brainstorm and create revenue activities like online courses. So we'll dive into topics like how AI can help you streamline your practices, improve your customer support, and even develop new revenue streams like online courses or marketing like podcasting. So secure your spot today. Go to www.coursecreationstudio.com/AI with J. That's www.coursecreationstudio.com/AI with J, and register today for this great webinar. And I'm really happy that Jay will be with us. She's just has a wealth of information, has been doing business strategy for a while, and I know you're going to be able to get some great support from her in during the webinar.